Well, thank you so much for being here today. It is just such a pleasure to have you with us. I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hi, Sandy. Good morning. It's so great to be here today. I'm so excited that you asked me to be on your podcast and look
Thank
forward to
you.
connecting with your audience. So, my name is Mary Ann Hughes, and I'm a special needs mom of two boys on the autism spectrum. They're now
Okay.
ages 19, and one's about to turn 21. But I always think how
Wow.
old they are because they're growing so quickly. But yeah, it's been quite a road raising special needs children. Definitely
Right.
highs and lows, and mostly highs. I like to think of those, at least those
Yeah.
special moments. But they're doing great. So my story is that I had to go through a divorce, a special needs divorce.
Oh.
And it wasn't anything I ever expected or planned for. I'd been married for
Hmm.
21 years and thought everything was going fine. I mean, as you
Wow.
know, special needs families have lots of stresses, and a lot of
Yes.
times the moms focus on the kids, and sometimes we may not notice maybe what's going on in the marriage or pay
Right.
that much attention to what we need to do in the marriage. But even though
Hmm.
I thought we are doing well and we're happy and the kids were doing fine best they could,
Hmm.
so kind of came to talk to me when I found out that my husband wanted a divorce.
Whoa.
And it was definitely hard because it wasn't something that I was ready for. I had not worked for uh, 20 years while I was raising my kids. Luckily,
Yes.
I was able to be a stay-at-home mom and focus on my two kids and do everything I had to do to advocate for them uh, through their schools and therapies and so on. And so, I wasn't prepared for life, different life. And
Exactly.
so I had to basically figure out what to do, how to get through the process, how to take care of my kids, and how to plan for the future so that we'd all have a good result in the end.
My goodness. So as you said, so you had two children, young adults now that were on the spectrum. One is overwhelming in many cases, and you're dealing with two. So it's very understandable how your attention could be hyper focused on getting through the day and making sure their needs are met. And as another guest mentioned previously, when you have a child with special needs, it is extremely difficult on a marriage. And I can understand how it could be, you could be blindsided and not realize that things aren't going the way you think they might be going. But talk to us a little bit about how that was for you. I came out of the blue is what it sounds like. And now you have to figure out what to do.
Exactly. So, um, yeah, I mean, I guess I like to say it was, or think it was out of the blue. Looking back on it, there may have been signs that maybe I was too busy to pick up on or focus on the
Hmm.
kids and didn't really see those
Right.
signs.
Right.
So I like to kind of just say, as a word of advice for families, whether or not they're going through divorce and they have special needs kids, or anybody for that matter, always take time for your marriage. I'm not here as
Hmm.
a marriage counselor by any means, but
Right.
there's so many day-to-day stresses that we have raising kids, special needs or not. And I think a lot of times we don't spend enough time on ourselves for self-care, and
Hmm.
we don't spend enough time on our relationships with other people. And I think,
So true.
and not to say that this situation could have been avoided or it had a different ending, but I would just offer advice to say, definitely keep yourself, know that you're important, and that maintaining, have date nights, do something fun with your family, even as a family, as a couple, with other families, with your friends. It's important to keep those relationships going.
Yes, absolutely. The self-care piece too, I think, is the first thing to go. As
Mhm.
moms, we're so all about taking care of everybody else to the neglect of ourselves. So that's really great that you mentioned that. But then, yes, the dynamics of the family and the couple need to be something that you really focus attention on and make it a priority, because if you don't make it a priority, it's going to fall by the wayside.
Right. And I like how you brought up the point about the self-care and realizing that you are important, because that's the first thing that hit me is this, well, before the split actually happened, things leading up to that, I realized, well, I've been giving all my energy to my kids and to my husband at the time, and I'm not taking care of me. So it's the first time
Mm,
it really dawned on me. And I used to, people always used to talk about that. You should take care of yourself, do this. I'm like, oh, I don't have time. My kids have so many needs. I need to,
right.
they look to me, and that's my number one priority. Well, it should be, but also make time for yourself. And I just wasn't doing that. I wasn't taking care of myself, um, physically, emotionally, or spiritually the way, I should have been. And
Sure.
so when the separation happened, that's when I started maybe eating healthier, taking better care of myself. I'm like, well, this obviously didn't work. This other approach I was taking, putting everybody else first and me last. So I
Hmm.
started doing things for me, even, but they're for me. And you can still think about it, it's still going to benefit other people. Because if you're happier and healthier, then you'll do better for your kids. And I've heard the expression, which I like to use: you can't pour from an empty cup. So if
Yes.
you feel like you're at your best, then you'll do your best for your kids as well. And if you're running frantic and don't get enough sleep and don't know which way is up, then it's not going to be good for the rest of the family members either.
That is so true. And I love that analogy. You can't pour from an empty cup. We think that the service that we're providing for everybody else to the negligence of ourselves is really benefiting everybody, but it's not. Because, yeah, if you're empty, you've got nothing to pour out to anybody. So it almost feels selfish. And I think, from a very young age, we're believed, or I was taught to believe, that it's all about making sure everybody else's needs are met. But we have to make ourselves a priority and not look at it as selfish, look at it as a way to be there for other people when they need us.
That's right, because I saw other people doing that, and like you said, I thought, well, maybe it's kind of selfish, or they're making time for themselves. But I guess they recognize that that is a priority, and that is time that's important to them and their physical fitness or whatever it might be, and they made time
Hmm.
for that. Whereas
Right.
I wasn't doing that, and then other effects happen because of that. So yeah, for sure.
Sure. So you've already told us a little bit about your family, but can you share a little bit more maybe about your sons?
Sure. So one is has more needs. So they're all kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. So I've got one who's
Okay.
very high functioning, more Asperger's type,
Hmm.
and one who's the other end. He's um, somewhat verbal. He can speak, but limited and not full sentences, and can't really carry on conversations. And has some behavior issues, some other issues as well, behaviors and whatnot. So they each have their own behaviors and issues. So it's kind of like being an expert in two different disabilities in a way, because really, I mean, some of the things are in common, but a lot of them, they each have their own needs that need to be addressed in separate ways and their own set of challenges for sure.
Yeah, that must have been a lot for you to handle, especially when they were younger.
It was, yeah, because at first, yeah, it's hard enough, um, with one, and we didn't get the first one diagnosed till I think the second one was born, and so we didn't, see it coming. I mean, there were maybe signs that back then I didn't pick up on, being a first-time mom,
Hmm.
about my son being on the spectrum, but and my second one we thought was fine, because compared to the first one, he was like a whole different baby. But then the other therapist saw some signs. I was like, well, you might want to have him evaluated too. So it turns out, he did have some differences as well, and he's come a long way. So I think with the second one, we were more proactive, did more earlier interventions, and
Hmm.
granted, he's a different child, had different abilities, but he's come a
Right.
long way and is now in a special transition program at a university. He just graduated from high school, so he's doing
Oh,
great.
that's
We'll
great.
talk about that too. But my older one is remaining in the high school till he ages out. So luckily, we're able to
Okay.
do that for him. And after that, I don't know. So for both of them, I've got a plan. So I've got kind of like a 2-year horizon, when one will be finishing his high school, or aging out, trying to figure out post high school placement for him, and the other one will
Right.
be ending his 2-year program. So then, and then that's when I also have to find, possibly, sell my house that was part of the divorce. So in 2 years, my whole life is going to look totally different. I was going to start planning for that. But I've gone through so much change the last couple of years. I want to kind of just sit still and
Yes.
just do what I have to do now before, making plans for the future. Because I've learned, things will come as they need
Hmm.
to, and opportunities will come to you, and the right people will come to you. And
Hmm.
so, granted, it takes a lot of work and homework to find the right placements and the right opportunities for your children. But I've learned not to stress so much in the moment about it.
Exactly. And it sounds like right now is a great time for you just to take a breather, settle in and be where you are because you have been through a lot and sounds like there's great change coming on the horizon. This is your time to take a deep breath and just say, I've got this. We can do
Well,
this.
yeah, well, for sure. But you know what? I can't. The good news is, this is actually a busy time for me in other ways as well.
Okay.
So, kind of fast forward through my divorce, and we can go back to that, in a minute.
Yes.
But I'm busy now because, as part of my divorce, it was such a process, and I had to go through so much and learn so much, and kind of had to start at ground zero to find special needs experts and figure out what to do to get a successful outcome for my kids, which I did. And
Okay.
so I was like, this it's not right that a special needs mom should have to go through so much to know what to do in divorce and to fight and advocate for her
Hmm.
kids.
Hmm.
And so I decided to form a company to help people who are going through what I had to go through.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so
That is fantastic.
yeah, so it's called Special Family Transitions. And so I've got a couple of clients and I'm trying to do some other projects and help people in other ways as well. I've got some um, free resources I offer, through different social media. But so I'm really excited about building that up because it's, like I said, I didn't work for 20 years and never had my own company or anything entrepreneurial. I've worked for Fortune 100 companies and have a business degree and background. And so this is kind of fun. This is an opportunity for me to do something different now,
Right.
and help other people. And that's really my goal right
Yes.
now, besides helping my kids. And my son will even ask me, what's more important, mom, us or your business? But he sees me doing other things that he hasn't seen me do before. And he's proud of me and excited that I'm doing that. But that
Yes.
is taking up a lot of my time when they're at school. So I've got a balance, as
Hmm.
any working mom does, I guess, home and professional
Right.
commitment. But it's great to be able to do that and make a difference. And everyone I work with is so appreciative that I'm doing this and helping them personally as well.
Oh my goodness. Yes. I want to back up for a little bit because you brought up something that I don't know that a lot of people even think about. So you are presented with a situation that you didn't anticipate. You're still dealing with the challenges of being a mom to two individuals on the spectrum that need you and have, it sounds like one of them has higher support needs. So you're navigating that, you're giving, excuse me, giving of yourself on a daily basis. And now you have to single-handedly figure out, what do I do next? Where do I go? There's no manual. There's nobody knocking on your door saying, have a seat, let me walk you through this. I've got the plan. So you created that now for other people, which is amazing. But take us back to where you were in that moment when you're suddenly faced with this uncertainty and this, I can't imagine how your heart was feeling and how you got out of bed in the morning and faced the day. But look at you now. That's just so exciting.
For sure. And now looking back on it, kind of the calendar, I kind of missed it, my mark of my actual 1 year anniversary from the end of my divorce process, which took 2 years, by the way.
Wow.
So it was quite complicated and a lot of things to
Yeah.
consider. But yeah, when I first found out, it was a shock. I was blindsided. And first I thought, um, yeah, it was going to be a temporary situation. So I tried to, I didn't talk about it with people and I kind of kept
Sure.
it to myself. And it was very difficult. But, when their father, at that point left the home, I was on my own and it was difficult, not just emotionally to deal with it, but like I said, you've got these kids who count on you. And that was my number one priority. It's like I didn't have time to really focus on myself, feel sorry for myself
Mm-hmm.
and grieve like, maybe wanted to or needed to. I had my kids from day one that still needed me to take care of them. It's not like
Right.
that was gonna just take care of itself. So
Right.
yeah, so that was my focus throughout my the separation, the divorce process, and even now is putting my kids first and figure out, helping them with whatever they needed. And it was a challenge because there's not many resources to help families going through, special needs families going through divorce. And so I tried really hard because I knew it was going to be hard on them. And I did all I could, but I was trying to also find professional assistance to have this be a positive experience for all of us.
Okay.
And for my younger one, I was finally able to find a therapist who has some experience with special needs who could, offer some advice and support. But for my one who was more involved, I tried so many and nobody was willing to, work with him because of his needs. Because you can't work with a counselor therapist if you can't have a conversation with them and they don't feel like it's going to be
Hmm.
helpful. I even looked into play therapy and they didn't feel that was appropriate. I went to even special needs ministers at the churches to see if they had anything to offer. And the best advice I got was like, Mary Ann, you've just got to do it yourself. And so what I
Wow.
did is, throughout their growing up, I had created social stories. And
Okay.
people with special needs, kids and autism, know what those are. But basically, it's a little story about what to expect, social norms and behaviors, and what's coming next. So I had to help
Hmm.
them with the transition. So I created, because no one else was out there to help them, I created for my kids a social story as to what was happening to our family and what they could expect, and that we still love them and are here for them. But this is what, things are going to be different now. And I even got dad to send me pictures of his new place so they would know where they would be spending the night. They've never spent the night away from their mom before. It was scary for me. It was scary for them. So I had to prepare them. And that's what I did. And I want to try to help other people, with that as well. But yeah, I think that helped prepare them. And that's my advice for people who find themselves in a divorce situation is, um, don't surprise your kids, I guess, with it, because it is hard for them to adjust. I mean,
Hmm.
for any transition change, kids with autism had a hard time, but especially something as dramatic as this. So you want to prepare them. I mean, definitely prepare the other spouse too. Don't spring it on them if you can, but definitely, discuss things as a family or as a couple, and find ways to help the child through the process, because that's the most important thing, I think, to both parents. End of the day is the well-being of their children.
Yes, absolutely. The social stories is a brilliant, brilliant idea. I've used social stories with my own son for things like getting a haircut, getting his nails clipped. It's just a way, for those of you who aren't familiar with social stories, it's a way for our kids to process before it happens what is about to happen, because so much of their experiences are unknown and can potentially be stress inducing and can create a lot of anxiety. So if we can reduce that by preparing them, this is exactly what's going to happen to you, then there's some comfort in that. Did you notice a difference in your son or sons after the social story was introduced?
Yeah, they were very interested because I had done them, like you said, we do them for many events, and I would do them every time we go on vacation. This is where we're going to go. Here's pictures of what it's going to look like. Here's
Mm-hmm.
the cruise, the plane, whatever it might be. And so they knew, that what that format was, and it's like, oh, this is interesting. They would read it over and over again. The pictures are important. So some
Mm-hmm.
people do it real basic level, with text and picture symbols, but I use actual words because of their level, and actual real pictures of real people and real events and real places. So yeah, they did find it helpful, and I found it helpful, and had dad and the teachers share it with them as well.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So go back to before the social story, when you are um, dealing with the crisis that just incurred, and you're trying to get through your day, and now suddenly your sons don't have another parent figure in the home. You don't have your social story created yet. Did you see behaviors increase at that time? What was their, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what was their response to this sudden change in their life?
Right, that's a great question. Yes, so my older son, who is less verbal, became aggressive, which was very rare for him. So we ended up having a therapist had to quit on us because he lashed out at her. At
Hmm.
school, he was showing some aggression towards his teachers, which is very unlike him. And so that was his way of expressing, his his confusion
Right.
and emotional impact from this. Um, and so my older son, um, was also confused and hurt, and tried to talk about it, and um, didn't understand why dad's gone, and why can't we, why is he not here? I mean, so for a
Right.
while, he would still help some and come over some, but over time it got less and less. And so yeah, it was a whole different set of circumstances and situations that nobody was expecting. They'd have nothing to understand that and relate to. It
Right.
was
Right.
definitely difficult, yeah. And that's why I wanted to find a counselor for him to be able to work through these issues, ones that I can directly help
Yeah, that was so great that you reached out to try to find therapists to be there, because you can't be everything in the middle of that to everybody. And so finding those supports is extremely helpful. Speaking of supports, do you have family supports and strengths that you fall back on?
Yeah. So when this first happened, I reached out to my sister. She was in a different state, but she was a great source of support. And my mom, I
Sisters are
couldn't.
the best.
Yeah. So with my mom, I mean, I was kind of telling her what was going on, but she couldn't really, relate to that because
Right.
she was married for 49 years. So my dad passed away. So she never had to deal with any kind of divorce issues and be like, oh, it's okay, he'll come back or whatever. And, so I kind of, kept that hope, which wasn't really a realistic one. So then I had to, quickly learn that wasn't going to be an option for me. Not to say that some people can't get back together, but in this
Right.
case, it was, choices were already made. And I had friends, and I think the most important people to reach out to are other special needs families. And so I connected with a woman who was dealing with a similar situation, had a special needs child as well, and going through a similar type situation. And so we kind of relied on each other. And then I found through Facebook, special needs Facebook groups, people who had gone through it. So I reached out to them.
Mhm.
And I, through those things and special needs events, for instance, there was a conference that I met some people at. It was actually the first weekend after he left, and I just needed help. Right, it happened to be that weekend, and so
Yes.
we connect with a special needs planner, who then I made an appointment with, and kind of gave me some ideas about things going forward as to things I need to
Okay.
plan for and think about. So definitely, yeah, reach out to people who are close to you,
Mhm.
to the special needs community and support organizations. I also then, after a few months, started a they call it divorce care. It's offered through different churches, but there's all kinds of
Right.
different groups and support organizations, and that kind of helped me, focus on me and focus on what was happening and
Right.
better deal with that too. And so there was also therapists and who did that a little bit, but definitely, yeah, you can't do this alone. I tried as much as I could to deal with it myself, but you do need help. You need people to talk to share, to offer information. And so you've got that kind of support, but also, this is kind of jumping ahead, but you also want to have a network and team of professionals to help you in your
Right.
divorce. And so, I part of the process, when I finally did have to get a lawyer, I didn't know how to go about that. And so the one I found was helpful in a lot of respects, but then I found that that firm really didn't have as much special needs knowledge as was going to be helpful in my
Mm.
case. So then I had to
Okay.
bring somebody else in, and special needs financial planner and other team members to help me figure out what would need to be done in my divorce, because that was the biggest challenge for me. Was my divorce, I made it about my trying to get the best result for my kids. It wasn't about
Right.
me and my feelings and my needs. And the as a divorce, there's two parts of it, and it helps to, it's hard to say, but remove yourself from the emotion and think of it as a business and legal financial transaction, right?
Mhm.
So you've got to, at the end of the day, what are you going to end up with?
Right.
And so that's the approach, you kind of had to do. And so it's easy enough to split the estate, as they call it, right, between the husband and wife, whatever percentage you're going to get. That's
Okay.
not always 50-50, and there's different things we can talk about there. But then the harder thing was the child support aspect. And that's the other important thing that special needs families need to consider, is that it's not just guideline child support that you're entitled to. And child support does not end at age 18 for special needs families, for kids
Okay.
that have a disability, a proven disability. Then they're entitled to lifelong, they call it indefinite child support. And so it's really important to make sure that you're eligible, understand that you're eligible for that. And that you
Right.
have a team of people, your professionals and your lawyers, to word things in such a way in the divorce documents and the decree that your child is not going to lose, either whether they're currently receiving them or will in the future, their other government benefits, because there's something called a special needs trust. I don't want to get too technical on this.
Right. Right.
There's different mechanisms you have to have in place so that you're protecting your children in the future. in terms of where the child support needs to go. So it becomes very, very complicated. And that's why I had to form a team of people. And that's
My
why I'm doing
goodness.
what I'm doing, because there is so much involved. And it's not like, one day decide you want to get divorced and be done. It's not a 30-day process by any means. I mean, it's great if you can agree and have similar goals for, for the future for your
Right.
children, and agree to that. But a lot of times that's not the case. Maybe the other party doesn't want to pay so much child support. And so what the battle I had to undergo, or I should say the challenge I had to
Hmm.
overcome, was I had to figure out, okay, what is the child support that my children would need?
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons the divorce took so long, and I had to engage all these professionals, was, especially with two kids and not knowing what the future would hold for them, what are they going to need? How are we going to survive without me having an income
Right.
and, not working, because I didn't see that I could work, having still to raise them, how are they going to get their needs met? And so that's a process that I had to go through, investigate all these different programs for each of them, in terms of what they would do post high school and what their opportunities would be and what those costs would be. And so, yeah, that's the process that I went through to try to figure out
Wow.
what we would do in the
I'm
future.
just, my mouth is just like wide open. I'm amazed, stunned, and trying to process everything you just shared. I am envisioning the struggle that you were going through, and yet you described it as you had to remove yourself emotionally, almost become a coach, because now you have to figure out the game plan. And it's, how am I going to support my sons? I don't have a job. I've not been working. I've got to figure that out. I've got to figure out their future. I've got to figure out how much they're going to need to sustain life, beyond me. I also need to figure out, how do I get an attorney? How do I go through a court case? There's so much that you had to work through. Let me ask you this. I know experience is the best teacher, and that oftentimes we go through situations so that we can then give back to other people who are following behind us. Do you think that if you had the information you have right now, after going through this, you would have been able to, maybe let me say this a different way. That's not what I meant to say. Would you be able to sit down with a mom who was facing your situation today and give her almost a step-by-step plan for what she needs to do to come out the other end in a much better way?
For sure. Yeah, that is my goal. And that's why I created my business. And so every family's and situation will be a little bit different. So I'm not going to say that one template is going to work for everybody, but
Right.
there are certain steps and considerations that will affect every family. And if I had had somebody like me, back then, to
Right.
kind of help, like you said, to help guide me and coach me, and I did become, after this, I did go through life coach training. I became a certified voice specialist and doing all kinds of experiences to
Love
help
that.
me help other people. But yeah, it would have saved me tons of time, which translates to tons of money,
Yes.
and stress and emotional energy, for sure. Because yeah, what was over a 2-year process could have been, probably cut in half, and my legal bills would have been cut in half as well. I don't even tell you
So
how much those were, but yeah, because every time you reach out to an attorney, they're going to bill you. Whereas someone like me, what I'm doing, is a fraction of that. So yeah,
mhm,
'cause everything that, like you said, you want to remove yourself from the emotion, but still it's there, right? And
right.
so you may do things or say things in such a way and have conversations with professionals that maybe, it's not their area of expertise, right? It's not
Right.
going to help you in your case. And not, because you're hurt emotionally or whatever it is, they can't do anything about that, right?
Right.
I mean, you can try to discuss things in divorce that can help, but as a lawyer, that's so much they can do, right? And
Mhm.
so that's why you might need, a coach. And that back then I didn't know there were even things as divorce coaches,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And so yeah, I'm a specialized kind of one, special needs divorce coach. So that's, and I'm there to work with everybody. I'm there to work with special needs families. That's my mission and my passion. But yeah, so find someone, whether it's a therapist, a coach, somebody else besides somebody who's going to, charge you large figures per hour to discuss the issues that you need to work through. And then that way you can have a plan and go in with a more organized and direct communications with your attorney, and then where you're addressing actually the issues at hand as opposed to everything else.
Right, right. So this is an aside, but were you able to then get back to that emotional place where you needed to walk through and get some support for yourself after the coaching hat was off and you were no longer, guiding your what am I trying to say? Yeah, you were the coach, you were non-emotional, you were just getting through the situation. Were you able to go back and deal with that grief in a way that was beneficial for you?
Yeah, I think over time, because the process did take so long, I think one thing that was helpful was that I was able to work through some of that, either
Okay.
on my own or with professionals, or like I said, those groups that I was in. And
Mhm.
so I think in the heat of the moment, if somebody, is first faced with divorce, that's when their emotions are the highest and they're at their greatest point of irrational thinking, I guess I would say.
Yes.
And so by having time to kind of cool down, and lets you kind of process what's going on, get more in touch, with what's happening and be able to cope with that.
Mhm.
Yeah, then I think you can go in with a more rational approach. Not to say that, I was definitely separated from emotion throughout the whole process. That's not the case, because it was very hurtful and was really difficult. But
Right.
but know what you have to do and do things in a positive. So my motto that I had was rise above. And so there's little things that can bring you down, or that you may act a certain way, but
Mhm.
that's not me. And I knew that wasn't me. So I wasn't going to do some things that maybe some professionals recommended in terms of how to interact or things to do during the divorce process. I was like, no, that's not me, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
So know that even if you have lawyers or other people helping you, it's your divorce, and you're the one in charge, and you're the one that has to decide the tone this is going to take. So it can be
Mhm.
very nasty, or it could be something that's done in a collaborative fashion. And sometimes the other party doesn't, you know, they're not going to necessarily want to do it the way you do it. So you got to just adjust. But know that, it's your divorce and your values, and you're going to have to live with the results at the end of the day.
Right.
That's
So
all.
you mentioned that yours dragged out for 2 years. That's not common, correct?
I don't think it's common, and mine also was not common in that mine ended up going to trial, which is very rare in divorce cases. But it was something I had to do to advocate for my kids and for their needs in the future. And so you asked a good question before about the emotional impact. And so
Mhm.
after the fact, thinking about it, I realized that the process I went through was the grief cycle. And so um, when I learned about that, I was like, well, that's like kind of what I did when I was in the business world. They call it the change management cycle, but it's something similar too. And so we each go through, steps in our process, because it is a loss and it is something that you grieve. And so
Yes.
you've got denial, you've got um, bargaining, and then there's different stages, and then you have finally acceptance at the end, where it takes a long time to get to that, and it's not a linear process, and sometimes you may go back and
Mhm.
different ways. But just recognize that what you're going through is normal. And so sometimes you do have to seek out help, professional help, and sometimes recognizing that you're in this phase, and that there are ways to get through it. I think that that's helpful too. There's a know that this time will end and things do get better, because I'm a different person now, like you said, from what was a year ago.
Mhm.
Back then it was kind of like a deer in headlights, and now I have a whole different confidence. I'm a new person. Kind of you go through a transformation. So even though I thought divorce was this terrible, ugly word, in a way, it's helped me find myself and help me now, have a mission to help myself, my family, and other people.
Right. You've turned it around and you've taken what can be a devastating experience and destroy somebody, and you've turned it into something beautiful where you're now making such a difference for other people. That's just incredible. That shows so much strength and courage. And I applaud you that you do that. When you talked about the denial piece, which, yes, all of these steps, I'm so glad you brought it up. all of this, all the steps that we go through when we grieve the loss of a life, when a loved one passes away, happens in similar situations like this that are very, very devastating for us. So denial is the first one. And you talked earlier about how you didn't want to share this with anybody. You kept it to yourself. Do you have a different approach or recommendation for women now who are starting to sense that things might not be going well and they just aren't comfortable sharing it?
Yeah, because I think it's a natural thing that in our brain just to protect ourselves because it is so
Right.
painful. Like this really can't be happening. People say that phrase all the time, right? This isn't
Mm-hmm.
happening. No, this is not real. But it is. And so, like I said, sometimes it may be temporary, and that's but both parties have to be honest and upfront about it, right?
Right.
But if it's not, and this is the direction that your marriage is heading, then it's important to face that. Even though it's hurtful, it's not what you planned for. It's not the dreams you had when you first got
Mm-hmm.
married or throughout your marriage. But right now, for whatever reason, circumstances change, and this is what you have to deal with. And it takes
Right.
a while to get through that. So it's not easy by any means. And so, as you mentioned that, something else came to mind. And so this is the process we also go through when we get a diagnosis for a child.
Right.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So it's the same thing. And so
Wow.
I think um, I think in a way that some parents maybe never really fully come to the acceptance phase, right? And so I'm not, I'm not going to psychoanalyze anybody, but maybe some people never got to that whole acceptance about, I have a special needs child, and this is what it's going to take, and this is what my life is like.
Mm-hmm.
I think, some people might try, other avenues in life and make choices that are not, going to be to the benefit of the family unit because they haven't come to that acceptance that this is the reality and this is what we have to deal with.
That is huge. That is a huge piece that you just hit on. And I can see how that can be something, choosing to live with blinders, choosing to pretend something doesn't exist, because if you acknowledge it, then you have to deal with it. And sometimes dealing with things is really difficult. So it's easier to put your head in the sand and assume that it'll go away or it'll get better, but it doesn't. It creates more problem. So,
Right.
wow. You know what? I see it so clearly with death and with divorce, but when you mentioned it with a diagnosis, it was like a light bulb moment for me. But yes, that's so true. Amazing. Amazing to think of it that way. So there are people that walk around fully aware that there's things going on with their children and they just choose not to, they choose to ignore it and not face it. Communication is so important. Communication, I think, is the key in accepting the diagnosis, in dealing with your spouse, and being able to be on the same page. And if you start seeing red flags that there's not communication, that's when you need to start seeking some help. So if somebody were to call you up, if I were to call you up today and say, oh my goodness, things are crumbling, what would you tell me? Is there like, I'm trying to understand what the process would be. Would I come in to meet you? Would we meet online? Would you coach me at first? Would you give me a set of instructions? What would it be like?
Right. So my business is so new that it kind of is going to be different for every client right now. So I have the opportunity to do that and work, one-on-one. And so, and I do offer 30-minute complimentary sessions, just to kind of understand your situation and maybe give you some advice, up front, and then see if you
Right.
want to work further. But yeah, first understand what the situation is, because as we talked about, it's not a cookie cutter approach. But
Mm-hmm.
usually by the time people come to me, they're in a, I want to say, I hate to use that term, but it's kind of like a high conflict, high emotion situation,
Right.
right? And it's that the other party, they don't feel is doing the right thing, or they're trying to figure out what to do, for the
Mm-hmm.
family. Because yeah, hopefully, you're going to come to an agreement and find resources, which is hard enough too. So I'll be happy to provide resources even for couples that do have a good relationship, or even though they're going through divorce, but do want to do the right thing. But
Right.
sometimes they're at different ends and different purposes. And so my goal is to help that person understand what is it going to take to have a successful outcome for your children in divorce, and also for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
so the steps you have to take, like I mentioned, finding the right attorney,
Right.
Understand that you have to plan for your child's needs in the future and know what those costs are going to be, and have them work with also a special needs, maybe a state attorney, to get the right documents in place. So even before the decree, depending on the age of your child, you might want to have the trust documents. There's first party and third party trust and other things that
Okay.
can get complicated. But there's so many things to consider that, yeah, I kind of, let them know about that. But also for those that are in the process, I can help them, um, look, um, look at the long term. So you look at what are your goals right now? What do you want to accomplish? Because sometimes you go into divorce and you don't know what is you want and how you want to
Right.
come out of it. And so I kind of, try to, bring them down from the emotional side to think, okay, what is it that we actually need to do? Let's make a game plan and then
Mhm.
kind of follow that. So yeah, so part of it is very tactical, but also part of it is just in terms of the emotion, trying to let them know, put that aside, focus on what's happening, and how to get through the divorce process as best as possible. So I may help you, prepare for lawyer meetings, or even participate in meetings, or get you ready for depositions or trial or whatever it might be in your case. So it's going to be a little very different. And hopefully, like I said, hopefully most cases, will settle. But you
Right.
want to make sure that you have the right things in your settlement. So that's, part of my goal is make sure that you've thought about all the things that you need to think about as a special needs parent for your child, and then share that information. Hopefully, work as a team, with your other parties as well. But yeah, there's so many different facets to it. Um, so some, parents might think, well, it's just a divorce, and it's not just a divorce. It's a special needs
No.
plan. It's like a life care plan that you have
Right.
to do, and most people aren't ready to do that, especially when their kids are young. You
Hmm.
can't really think about what the future is going to hold, but this is the time to start at least thinking about that. And not that this is the final decision on that, because as the kids get older, you can always go back and make
Right.
modifications. But
Okay.
it's best not to have to engage lawyers, over and over again. So you want to try to get it right the first time, and that's what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do, and connect you with other resources that can help you as well.
I think what you offer would be invaluable to so many families. This is just so amazing that you have this already prepared and you've walked through the path. So you're the expert, right? Even though you might not have if there is such a thing as a degree in special ed, divorce for parents without being an attorney, you have that life experience, and that means so much because you've walked that path, you felt the pain, you understand, and you can empathize. I think the coaching piece is probably huge. That's probably where you start with a lot of families, depending upon when they contact you, where they are in that process. But it's just such a comprehensive approach that you have, not only dealing with the emotions, but also, okay, now we've got to get down to business and let's think this through. I love that. So I want to digress for a minute and talk about the joys, because there are many joys that you have with your boys. Share one of your greatest joys in parenting your sons.
Yeah, so they're wonderful boys. And so, granted, we've had some behavior issues and other issues in the past that at the moment aren't so fun. But overall, they're wonderful boys and bring me lots of joy. We enjoy traveling together, which, now that it's been COVID, we haven't done anything the last couple of years.
Right, right.
But that's always fun to do. And so, um, yeah, so one of them, the one more involved son, likes to do puzzles, for instance. And so he can do 1,000-piece puzzles, and the puzzles he prefers to do are ones of different geographical locations. So even though our
Really?
world is really limited right now, he gets excited about learning about different countries and cities,
Yeah.
um, and doing puzzles for that. So that's not maybe the greatest joy, but it's something nice and positive they do. And my younger son, like I said, he just graduated from high school, and so made tremendous strides since he was a child and hardly talking, and has been special needs school since he was also 2 years old, and
Right.
ECI from 6 months or whatever that was. But yeah, we've come a long way, and now to see him flourishing, and even was able to do through Texas Workforce a little summer working opportunity, which was exciting, for him and for me. And now he's in this university program at that they just created to help people with learning differences. So hopefully one day he'll be able to do well enough to go to, a 4-year college and get a degree in that way. So, anything's possible. So, when they're
Exactly.
young, and when they're young, you don't know what's ahead of you. You think, it's the end of the world or whatever. And it's not. Everyone is going to develop at their own pace and in their own way. And you may not know what the limitations are for each person. We don't want to limit them, I guess is a point. And I think one thing I've heard recently, which is really true, and I try to take this approach, is that instead of focusing on the weaknesses of somebody, focus on their strengths and their interests and nurture that.
Yes.
Because that's where we are. And so my one son, my higher functioning son, he likes, he's a whiz at maps, and he's like my personal GPS. And so that's his strength, and that he loves that. He does it for fun, and I can see that being a profession for him, something related to that. And so we want to, even though he has challenges in other areas, that's one area that is his strength, and that's one that we want to focus on for the future. And so with that's easier than with my other son, who has more challenges. So we're still trying to figure out what that future is going to look like.
Right.
But as he gets older, and now that the divorce is kind of behind us, his behaviors have kind of come back to where they were. And so he's we can go out in public again. For a while we can't do much, but now we can go out socially, and hopefully once COVID is over we'll do even more. So right now we are still pretty restricted, but you just know that, just focus on the positives. Your children will bring you joy, and just help them in any way you can to, you still want to help them overcome some of their challenges, but know that, but also look at the positives and what they can do and what they enjoy doing, and let them make time for that too.
Yeah, I think if we really study our kids and look at what they're naturally able to do, what they're interested in, and what their strengths and abilities are, there's the answer right there. It's like the mystery is solved. That if we can match that to a hobby, which becomes a career or a part-time business that they do, that's where they're going to be happy, because they're doing something that brings them so much pleasure. So I love the fact that your son is into GPS. Have you guys ever done geocaching with him, where you use GPS to try to figure out where things are located?
We tried that one time, but he wasn't that interested. He likes creating his own maps and Google Maps and all that. So we'll have to look into that again. Maybe at the time he wasn't interested, but yeah, he's got an incredible skill, and we're so excited for him. And that's what he does for fun, even as downtime. Some people like to play with their iPad. My son likes to look at maps and draw maps, and that makes him happy.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. So I want to ask you this real quick too. It's been a couple of years now. How have your sons come through this? It was difficult at first. You got them the support that they needed. How are they dealing with the changes that have occurred in their lives now?
Yeah. So
emotionally, are they in a better place?
They're in a better place. I think, no child wants their parents to get divorced. So, it's not something I advocate, for. I mean, if it's your situation, it's your situation, and make the best of it. But I'd like, I think some ongoing supports would still be helpful. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what that would be and how that would look. And I'm actually in this other organization, this group called Lone Star Lend, LEND, which is a leadership in education for autism and neurodevelopmental disabilities. And we're doing a service learning project for that. It's basically where we get basically seminars and educated by leaders in the field in disabilities, about all different aspects, from diagnosing to all kinds of aspects. And so one of the things that we do is a project. And so the project that I put out there to get approved is to help kids through special needs divorce.
Love it.
And because there's resources that the parents can go to, like we talked about, professionals and so on. But like I said, I had such a challenge finding things for the kids. And so that's a project that we're going to be working on. And as a result, there'll be a series of webinars that we're going to, I think, put out. So I'll be happy to share information on that later.
Yes.
So how can parents help their kids through divorce?
Mhm.
What can we do? Whether it's social stories, prepare them. What are the things we need to do? Find professionals that are willing to work with our kids.
Right.
That's a big thing. But to answer your question, it's, I kind of take it day to day.
Mhm.
Some days are good days and some days for whatever reason are more difficult. And so just know that these effects are never going to go away, I think, for the mom, for the parent, or for the child. They're always going to have to
Right.
deal with that. It does get better. That's painful over time, but it's still something that is going to be there. And so the better relationship you can have with your ex, I think the better. Um,
Right.
so that's, definitely, we want the other parent to definitely stay involved and be involved in the child's life. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. So
Mhm.
definitely, as you go through this process, you find yourself in a divorce and it's going to happen, and um, that's what's in store for you. Then just, go in with the attitude that, this is hard, but you got to do the best you can and create an environment so that it's going to be the most positive for the child.
Right. You have to learn to adjust to your new normal.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I love that you said it's a never-ending process. It continues. It's just something that you get stronger with day by day and you
Right.
adapt. Yeah. I really hope that you're able to tap into some resources for the individuals that we know and love who do have greater support needs to be able to, however that looks, express what they're experiencing. You might be nonverbal, but you're very much aware that life has changed and that you're trying to process something you don't quite understand. And to not have an outlet, I just can't even imagine. So I think that's going to be a challenge to find those people, because what will that even look like? But I know they're there. So I'm very curious what that kind of therapy would look like, you
Right.
know?
But at the end of the day, like I said to me, it's basically on you. I mean, you're the mom,
Right.
and just let your kids know that they're loved. And no
Mhm.
matter, even if, whatever is your decision, his decision, whatever it was, just know that, it wasn't because of the kids, and you're
Right.
going to do everything you can to provide a loving, supportive environment for them, and that they don't have to worry about it. Because even my, younger son would ask, well, mom, what are we going to do? Where are we going to live? Are we going to have enough money? And those are questions a child shouldn't have to ask, right?
Right.
But so definitely don't. Um, uh, I guess if you're going to have adult conversations about these things to other people, don't let your child, hear them.
Right.
Definitely don't speak negatively about um, your ex or soon to be ex in front of them, or try not to at all if you can. I mean, I know it's hard, but this is a situation you have to deal with, and just focus on what you have to do to get the result that you need. And
Mhm.
hopefully, like I said, it's going to be uh, not an easy experience, but one that will help you, better understand yourself and know yourself, and then
Right.
grow from that.
Right. Exactly. So that kind of goes along with this next question. Do you have any helpful hints besides contacting you? Any helpful hints or tips that people can use? Maybe not necessarily with going through a divorce, but just when life gets hard. It's hard when you have a child with special needs. You have two. So I'm sure there have been things you've had to do to help you stay positive when it's been very challenging. Can you share any of those tips or hints with us?
Yeah, I guess when things get hard, just take a moment and step away from the situation. Because right now, we stress so much, and we worry about the future so much and day-to-day pressures. But sometimes it's good to just maybe go out and take a walk and
Hmm.
just see what happens from there. Not that, I'm Pollyanna, things are going to get better by themselves, but worrying about it and focusing on the negative or the difficulties is not going to help you get to where you need to be. So, and that's kind of goes back to what we started at the beginning about the self-care, is so just make time for you.
Hmm.
Know that you'll be there for that you'll always be there for your kids, and you can only be the best mom you can be if you're taking care of yourself. So that's, I guess it kind of comes down to that, is, like you said earlier, it's not being selfish to take care of you. You've got to take care of
Right.
yourself so you can take care of others. Like they say the airplane analogy, right? Put your oxygen mask first, and then
Yes.
help,
Yes.
help your kids. And that's so true, because if you're not, 100%, and sometimes with sleepless nights, we're not going to be 100% for sure, because I've had my share of those. But
Hmm.
um, just do what you have to do so that you're in a good place so you can do the best for your kids.
Right. And self-care can be as simple as you just said, go outside, take a walk, remove yourself from that situation for just a moment and realize it's a moment. Something else you talked about, worry, brought into my mind. I remember this, hearing this years ago, and I share this every time somebody talks about being worried about something. Worrying is like sitting in a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So take that worry and do something with it. Go exercise, find a resource, reach out to somebody, but just living in those thoughts that consume you and that bring you down is not going to be beneficial. So find some self-care, do something that's going to help you rise out of that situation and embrace the moment for joy. Look for joy in the moment. Going outside is huge, especially during the pandemic. There are so many times during the day I just go sit in the backyard and look up at the sky and enjoy the clouds. You know, 2 years ago, I would have never just sat and looked at the clouds and thought, wow, it's such a beautiful day, you know, because we were so busy. That's kind of nice. Is there a product or resource that has impacted you in a positive way? I'm thinking about specifically because we've talked so much about divorce. When you were going through the initial stages, was there something that was a great resource for you?
Yeah, this is actually a question. So I think what helped me, because I didn't go for that much outside therapy, is I ended up watching a ton of YouTube, honestly. And so, even like, podcasts like this or just things that are inspirational, motivational, educational, I think those help a lot because know that other people are going through what you're going through. You're not alone. You can get some tips from things that other people have been through. And it helped me to kind of understand what was happening to me and then how to overcome that and maybe to better understand, some behaviors that either my children were going through or that my ex, was exhibiting some behaviors there. So I could better understand that and then know how to best deal with that. So once you kind of take out that mystery of why something's happening, it makes a lot more sense. And you can go away from the emotional thinking to the rational thinking. And that, I think that's the key that turned me around is being able to say, okay, well, this is hurtful and this is, not what I wanted, but
right.
The day, this is what I have to do for me and my kids for us to survive and have a good result going forward.
So to go from emotional thinking to rational thinking.
Yeah.
That's taking off the, what did we say earlier? Removing yourself emotionally and putting on the coach's cap. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this?
And kind of, I guess one way of putting it is kind of stepping into your power. I mean, you raise special needs kids. You're very strong. You may not think you are, but things we have to do day to day, most people do not have to deal with. And so know that you can do it, whatever it takes, whatever life throws at you, you can handle it. And if
Mary Ann, that is genius. I love that. Say that again.
I can't remember what I said now, but whatever life throws at you, you can handle it. Yes. So don't think that you can't, that you're not good enough. You are, because you know your kids more than anyone. You know what they need and they're counting on you. So you're there for them. And one thing I want to add too is a lot of times, and I know I've done this, is things become overwhelming because we try to look at it all at once. But so I found the key is to break it down into manageable bite-sized steps. I mean, just do one thing at a time. And so you may have, whether it's your divorce or planning for your kids or whatever it is, it may seem overwhelming, but if you just make a plan for, what you have to do to get to the end result, step by step, and just tackle one at a time. Even if you don't know what those steps are, you can do what you can each day to just make a step forward. Just make progress each day in one little way, whatever it might be on you personally, for your kids, for your case, for life. Just take one step at a time and you'll be okay.
My father used to say this, and it sticks with me often. By the mile, it's a trial. By the yard, it's hard. but inch by inch, everything's a cinch. And we tend to look at the big picture, like you said, and get overwhelmed, but we're not living that big picture. We're only living in this moment. So we have to break it down in small bite-sized pieces and just deal with what's right in front of us.
Exactly.
And then it'll be easier. Yeah, that's so great. I just want to hit back on the thing that you talked about, which was such a light bulb moment. And I think many people need to hear this again. As a special needs parent, you have so much inner strength you don't even realize you possess, because the tasks that you do on a daily basis to get through your life, most people don't ever have to deal with. So you are strong. You are very courageous. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and move on and realize, look in the mirror and tell yourself, I can do this, because you can. That was huge. I'm so glad you shared that, because I think a lot of people need to hear that. So you've already kind of shared this in what you just said, but in case there's more wisdom and genius inside you, I want to pull it out. If you were sitting with someone who's just about to walk in your shoes, and you have this great insight that you've gained from all your experience, what encouragement would you give them?
Yeah, first you want to empathize with them, and it's hard, and it's nobody wants to get divorced
Right.
initially, right? I mean, there may be things that may lead you to that circumstance, but it's going to be hard. No one said divorce is easy, and it's not. The process in there don't make it easy, but know that like I said, you have the strength, and if you don't have the strength, other people will help you to get to where you need to be. So know that you have a special needs child, and your goal in this is to create the best environment during the divorce, as well as work towards what the future is going to look like after divorce. And that has to do really, in my case, and I think for most special needs families, come down to what's it going to take for my child to have the best opportunities available to them, given their circumstance and given their disabilities. And that's all we want for our kids, right? I mean, to be happy, to be taken care of, and to feel loved. And so remember, I guess that's a good point, is remember, throughout this process, you may be pulled 1,000 different directions, but be sure to spend time with your kids and reassure them that they're important and they still come number one, and that you love them, and that everything that you do is for them.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So I know people are going to want to reach out and connect with you. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so best way to reach me, all my contact information is on my website, www.specialfamilytransitions.com. And I have links there to my email, which is Mary Ann at specialfamilytransitions.com. So you're welcome to email me directly as well. And I have a YouTube channel that has lots of tips. I even did a series about that grief cycle we talked about, and I'm adding, more and more things on there. And as a special needs mom, sometimes, I'm not able to upload as often as I, would like, but I'm trying to do more and make that a priority, because I do want to offer, resources that people don't have to pay for, that they can just try to find, like you said, to be able to see, get some tips and how to best get through the process. But for those that do need more intensive help, then that's, what I'm here to do. So definitely, I'm also going to try to do some other opportunities and other things for people to get help. But right now, those are the best approaches, I think, to reach out.
And your YouTube channel
is Special Family Transitions. So all my social media is under that name, Special Family Transitions, whether it's my YouTube, Instagram. I even have a Facebook page, Special Family Transitions. And so, and I even have a Facebook private group. Excellent. Those that are going through that and some more, private type, conversation sharing. So I'm trying to get that off the ground as well.
And a safe space for them to share where they might not feel comfortable sharing with the people closest to them who know them well. Right. They might not feel comfortable yet divulging anything, but in your group, they can.
Yeah, and I can direct them to that. I think there's a link on my website to that as well. And so, so I'm here to support them in any way they can, any way I can. Know that, there's a lot of people who've been through this. This is unfortunately, too common that special needs families get divorced. And I've heard numbers
Right.
from 70 to 80% of special needs families do get
Really?
divorced. Yeah. And so, I think some of those happen when kids are young, and a lot of them happen when they're older,
Right.
because for whatever reason, but
Well,
know
I
that.
think when they're young, it's because you're too heavily involved in getting through the day that you don't even have time to stop and think about your relationship. It's when they're gone that now you can go, whoa, wait, what just happened? And now you're facing reality of what? So I can understand that. It makes sense. I mean, it's when you have typically developing children the same. They always say empty nesters is when now you're facing reality of you have ignored each other for all these years. And now you're facing a relationship that kind of has fallen apart. But yeah, magnify that with special needs kids makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yes, but either way, so whether you're getting divorced or not, it's important to do special needs planning, kind of start thinking about the future anyway. I mean, I think that we all need to do that. And it's not something that we want to do when our kids are young and we kind of like in that denial stage, put our head in the sand, and don't want to think about the future.
Yes.
But even if you're in a, great marriage and, see it continuing, which definitely that's my hope for families, that things do work out.
Right.
Is you want to still be able to plan for what the child needs. It could be, funding for the future, getting all kinds of plans in place and documents. So the divorce process kind of hurried that along for me and made me do it. But I think it's something that all families need to do in some form or fashion. There's plenty of people out there who can help, and I'm also happy to help and provide resources for that too.
I'm so glad you said that. I had a friend ask me just yesterday, so what are your plans for your son now that he's 19? And I said,
Yeah,
we don't really have any yet, which is ridiculous. I know better, right? So are you saying, am I hearing you say that I can reach out to you and you have resources and you can help?
for sure. Yeah, I'm trying to expand more into that. Yeah, because actually I created a YouTube that was a little different than my normal ones, which I highlighted a post-high school program, and obviously that was the most interest I got on one of my videos, and so I want to continue that series.
Okay,
and
great.
And highlight different post-high school opportunities for families, for these kids, no matter what their level. So that's kind of my next project, as well as I do everything else. But yeah, I think there's a big need for that to, whether or not you're getting divorced, what's the future going to look like for my child? There's different phases. There's plenty of people who help, when the kids are young, but right now, because of my kids and where they are, I'm looking more towards the high school, post-high school areas.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot to consider, but even beyond that, working with a special needs planner, there's plenty of those, in town that can help you, or wherever you're located, to think about things in the future as well.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent. This has been so beneficial. Love your insight, love your wisdom, love your willingness to share your heart and to take something that was just the worst you've had of experience and turn it into something that can make a difference for so many others. Genius, brilliant, amazing. Can't say enough wonderful things about you. I'm so glad you were here, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thanks so much, Mary Ann.